Ed Martin, president of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. It's great to be back again to do some more fact-checking on Mrs. America, the FX series. $50 million plus spent on the FX series, which is streaming on Hulu. The last episode recently was streamed out there, so we've got a lot of fact-checking to do. First of all, please visit realmrsamerica.com and please like and share this video and subscribe down here. We need to keep getting the word out on what the truth is. Not what Mrs. America, the series, says, but what the truth about real Mrs. America, Phyllis Schlafly, is. You know, the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980 was a huge victory for conservatives. It was a 2-decade fight that had started in the 1960s through Goldwater, through Nixon and some of his failures, and on to Reagan. Huge victory. And it wouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened without Phyllis Schlafly, her leadership in general, and her leadership on the ERA. We'll talk more about that, the fight against it. Today we have to fact-check Mrs. America's attempt to diminish the close relationship, the powerful relationship on policy, on personality between Ronald Reagan and Phyllis Schlafly. Let's watch this first clip.
I can't tell you how many ladies have come up to me. They scrounged together every penny they could to come here. Well, I believe they would walk to the ends of the earth, Theo.
Oh, no.
We couldn't take off without asking you if Ron could count on your support.
Well, there are a lot of attractive candidates. Crane, Conley.
They can't beat Carter. The economy's in the toilet. Voters are craving an anti-establishment outsider like Reagan.
Yes, but Ron did make some mistakes 4 years ago, not fighting for delegates in northern states.
He's learned.
Mrs. America, they try to make it look like Phyllis hesitated to work with Reagan. It's a crazy idea. Phyllis Schlafly was supportive of Reagan back when he first got into politics as governor of California. Didn't mean, by the way, that she didn't sometimes disagree with him on policy, but she had a relationship with Governor Reagan and recognized he was a conservative. In fact, a lot of people think she made him better and better and more conservative over the years. After his 1968 run, by the way, she wrote this publicly, called him, quote, a great American, a wonderful patriot, a leader of stature and courage, who conducted himself throughout with dignity and integrity. In 1972, Phyllis supported Reagan even before he announced whether he was going to run. She was encouraging him, thinking he was a true fighter against communism and for conservatism, and he knew that if he ran, he could count on Phyllis. Well, he decided not to run. In 1976, in the battle between Ford and Reagan, Phyllis was all in for Ronald Reagan. She wrote a book back then, right in 76. It's called Ambush at Vladivostok. And it describes how Ford was failing in terms of addressing the Soviet threats. And it was clearly thought to be a help for those conservatives who were looking at an alternative to Ford. By the way, she also did a lengthy televised endorsement of Ronald Reagan in 1976. You know, when they depict it as if Reagan had to beg or negotiate for Phyllis's endorsement, they misunderstand what's going on. It wasn't true in 1980. It's not factual. Let's watch another outrageous clip of Mrs. America, how they're trying to rewrite history.
Congratulations, Mr. President-elect.
Well, thank you, Phyllis. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm very well, sir. And yourself? I hear there's been a bit of a cold snap in Washington, D.C. over the weekend.
Then it's a good thing I'm still at the ranch. We still have a few more weeks of the peanut farmer.
Oh, no. Yes, of course. I suppose I'm just very keen to get to work, sir.
Which is why I'm calling. Your coalition carried me across the finish line. Your list was invaluable. But Jim tells me that overall I didn't do so well with the ladies. Seems I have a woman problem. It isn't that you don't deserve it. I just can't afford to upset the pro-ERA groups. You fought an important battle, but sometimes the battle follows us home. I respect you a great deal, Phyllis. And that is why I wanted to call to say thank you. Take care.
This is supposed to be the punchline of Mrs. America. They say, Phyllis Schlafly supported Reagan all these years and he didn't reward her. That's just not factually true. In fact, it's a lie, and there's a lot of evidence about Reagan and about what Reagan truly believed. On the question of the ERA, you can see in his own words, and again, Mrs. America tries to distort everything. Here's a clip of Ronald Reagan in his debate in the run-up to the election against Jimmy Carter, and here's what he said. Watch this clip.
Well, my last word is again to say that we were talking about this very simple amendment in women's rights. And I make it plain again, I am for women's rights. But I would like to call the attention of the people to the fact that that so-called simple amendment could be used by mischievous men to destroy discriminations that properly belong by law to women, respecting the physical differences between the two sexes, labor laws that protect them against doing things that would be physically harmful to them. Those could all be challenged by men, and the same would be true with regard to combat service in the military and so forth.
Reagan didn't feel a need to appease the pro-ERA groups. He went boldly out there. He was a guy that went bold colors. He took a stand against ERA. By the way, 3 previous presidents, Carter, Ford, and Nixon, had all been too scared to stand up for conservative values and against the ERA. Look, Reagan was a true conservative, and Phyllis Schlafly fought hard for him for many years. Again, it didn't mean that she always agreed with everything in the Reagan years. That's always true with Phyllis Schlafly. She stood for her values and conservatism, but she believed in Ronald Reagan. And Mrs. America makes it seem that Phyllis Schlafly was seeking a high-level position. It's just not true. There's no facts to back it up. There was a lot of talk that Phyllis Schlafly, maybe she should have run for office again or could have served in the cabinet, but that's not what she wanted. What she wanted was conservative policies, conservative principles. In fact, the only thing that she ended up receiving from the Reagan administration was something she really did covet, and that was service on the Commission for the Bicentennial of the U.S. Constitution. She thought it was so important to highlight our Constitution. He gave her that position. She served with distinction, traveling all over the country, talking about, educating on the Constitution and its bicentennial. And here's Ronald Reagan speaking about Phyllis. Watch this clip and say to yourself, that's Reagan talking about Phyllis. They knew each other well. Watch this.
But let me close with a personal word of thanks to Phyllis. Recently, Phyllis agreed to serve on our Bicentennial Commission on the Constitution. Just one more example of all the help she's given me during the years. But my gratitude to Phyllis goes far beyond the personal. I'm grateful to her as an American for all the wonderful work she's done over so many years. Phyllis, I salute you, and I salute all the members of the Eagle Forum. You are all volunteers in the service of America, and you are making all the difference.
That clip is just one of so many that we have in the Phyllis Schlafly archives at the Phyllis Schlafly Center in the heart of America, right in St. Louis, Missouri. It's an extraordinary set of documents, and there's lots of other places where Ronald Reagan is praising Phyllis's work. She was in the White House, and in our offices we have pictures of her with the president. She was an advisor to Ronald Reagan. She was a great advisor, and she helped him a lot. It was later discovered, so many things about Reagan were discovered later on. In his personal notes, he kept a kind of a journal. He once wrote this, quote, Phyllis Schlafly came by. This is while he was president. He wrote this as he was president. Phyllis Schlafly came by. She's darned effective. Her plan to counter the new ERA campaign is brilliant, end quote. Reagan didn't shut out Phyllis Schlafly. Reagan knew Phyllis Schlafly was a transformative leader that got him to the White House and made a lot of great things happen. Mrs. America wants to smear President Trump right along with Reagan and Phyllis Schlafly. They make it look like certain things are a coincidence. You think it's a coincidence that Mrs. America shows you this image? They first show the Make America Great button, and then they end the show by talking about Phyllis Schlafly's book, The Conservative Case for Trump, which, by the way, I co-authored with her. Here's the truth. The through line in Phyllis Schlafly's life is the greatness of America, and it came right through Reagan down to President Trump. Even in Mrs. America, they make it seem like Phyllis wanted a better slogan, and we're supposed to be shocked. I suppose the liberals in Hollywood are, that Make America Great was Reagan's slogan as well as Trump's slogan. Well, Phyllis Schlafly knew that Ronald Reagan had a vision, and so did President Trump. By the way, President Trump, in his campaign and in his life, he admired Phyllis Schlafly also, just like Reagan did. Watch this clip that Donald Trump said at one of his inauguration dinners right around the time he was sworn in as President of the United States.
I could win. Phyllis Schlafly, the great Phyllis Schlafly, you know who that is. So, she's a great woman, was a great woman. Passed away 6 months ago. I went to her funeral in St. Louis. And she came out against all of her fellow conservatives. And she said, I am not endorsing anybody else but Donald Trump. I don't care what exactly he is. He's like an unknown quantity, but he's going to win. And Reince sort of had the same thing. And Reince was taking tremendous abuse. And I want to thank, by the way, Phyllis, because she went through hell. I'm telling you, Phyllis went through hell in that last period of a year. And she turned out to be right.
You know, the lies of Mrs. America, they're not just meant to rewrite the past. They want to rewrite the future too. They want to tell us what the legacy of Phyllis Schlafly should be going forward. Well, the real legacy of Phyllis Schlafly is a beacon of hope. She educated herself, and she built a community, she built her family, and she pointed us forward, and she does it today. Her eagles are all around the country still working for pro-family, pro-life, pro-America, yes, pro-Trump policies. And we'll never stop fighting for those causes, because she didn't believe that each of us was the only thing that made America great. She knew it was all of us together, our Constitution, our rule of law, and leaders like Reagan and Trump. Please go to realmrsamerica.com for more content. There's a lot written there. We've got more tapes. And please share and like this and subscribe down here so we can pass it on. We've still got more fact-checking. Mrs. America, the series may be over, but we've got more fact-checking, a few more, and we'll be back very soon. Thanks for watching this.